Yes, okay, never mind. Just Lotus giving me a hard time. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order. It's just a couple minutes after 6. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, so I think I heard a motion from Deputy Warden, and was that a seconding from Councillor Sean Sampson?
It was, yep.
Thank you. Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so the motion is carried. All right. So we're still admitting some folks. So I'm just gonna charge on. I guess to get us started, you know, I just wanted to thank everyone, and I know from our discussion at council that people were feeling like the majority felt like we needed to have another discussion. I think, you know, in normal times this may not have been necessary, but you know, we are still in these uncertain times, so I appreciate everyone's patience with that. To get us started, I know I had some specific questions, but I guess at this point I would open it to councillors if you also had specific questions, or if you'd like me to go first, I'm happy to do that. Points of clarity that I had. Is that okay if I maybe jump in with a few questions for staff?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So a couple of questions I had then. Probably this is mostly for you, Jason, but Dawn or anybody, Chris, whatever, like chime in for sure. I wanted to ask about the one-time projects. So we had talked about things like the strategic plan, the trails study, the accessibility study, and even the chamber upgrades coming from reserves. Was that correct? Like, am I remembering that correctly? We talked about those as one-time costs, I thought, and so we were going to take them from a different spot. Was that?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
So we had mentioned, I think at one point in a budget meeting, potentially taking those from reserve, but in a future meeting, we had basically stated that
okay,
it didn't really make sense to take from reserve and put into reserve.
And to put back in reserve, right.
Likely, usually you would just balance off your budget with one or the other, I guess.
Right, and so then when we decided not to contribute into reserves, right, I thought that was kind of, anyway, I guess I'm wondering at this point is there an opportunity for us to take some of those one-time costs, and like when I was looking through the budget numbers last night, I was even looking at like the leachate study and the money we want to spend to do some assessment around the Evanston school, the old school. Like, is there an opportunity, like we did in last year with Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health, the previous council, you don't see that in the operational budget. You see it coming from, you know, it's just not there, right? Like, but that contribution was still made. So I'm just wondering if you can maybe provide some clarity or context around that.
Sure, yeah. So the way it works is that, you know, if you take a look at our capital investment plan as an example, when we have a capital project on the capital investment plan, we would state different areas of how that project would be funded. If it's coming from gas tax, for example, then it would fall in a gas tax column. If it would come from operations, it would fall in an operations column. But those projects are largely or are all capital in nature, right? So,
well, they're all studies. Would that make them? Oh, sorry, from the capital plan, you mean?
From the capital plan, right?
Yeah.
So the way to look at it on the operating side is we don't really look at it theoretically as if you wanted to fund the strategic plan out of a reserve, because it's not a capital project in nature, as an example. So basically you would put into the operating budget all these things that you want to fund, strategic plan being one of them. And if at the end of the day you got to the end of your budget and everything you felt was solid and you were in a deficit position, then you would decide how to fund that deficit, not individual specific items. So if the shortfall was, let's say, 100,000, just for sake of argument, and we felt the budget was solid and there was really no other areas, excuse me, to cut, and we were satisfied with the current tax rate or a tax rate increase or whatever it was, then council could make a decision to fund the deficit out of the operating reserve. So the operating reserve is meant to fund a deficit, just a total deficit, not a specific item. I mean, you could look at it in the sense that if these 4 items equal 100,000 and that's what we're short, we're going to take the 100 from operating reserve. That's a fair approach, but rather than look at it in specific, it's just important that council decide what items they want to leave in the budget, what can't be touched and what you're not willing to touch, and then whatever the shortfall is basically what you would take out of operating reserve, or you would increase the taxes. And your other option, if it's not an option, is to reduce the expenses. So I think you're looking at it more from a global perspective rather than an individual item basis.
Right. Okay. So how did the Cape Breton South monies then from last year end up not coming from our operating budget from last year?
So there was money put aside for physician recruitment that had been carried forward for several years and outstanding from the previous efforts to recruit physicians. So when the group had approached council, we knew that it wasn't a budgeted amount, and councillors were aware that 25,000 was there. So they basically made a motion. My understanding, Don can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that council made a motion to give them the money that was left over.
And where was that money sitting though? Was it sitting in our operating reserve?
It wasn't in a reserve. It was sitting in operations, but it was, call it an accrual, call it whatever you want. It was money put aside. So it was an expense budgeted in the prior year with money put aside to fund that amount. Well, it wasn't purposely for that. It was for another purpose.
Right.
But rather than bring it back in as a revenue, council just decided to give it to that group.
Okay. So it's basically in how it was treated more because it was from a prior year allocation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
right.
really no other pots of money, I guess I would say, that you could use to fund besides all the avenues that we talked about, whether it be gas tax, operations, applying for funding, what have you.
Okay. All right. So then my next question was related to the communications plan. We had put in an amount for communications planning. I'm just looking for it now, but in line item, of course, there's like 10,000. So this was under government services, and it was, I think, line 42-ish, something like that. Other general services advertising.
So I don't recall putting in any money for a communications plan. I mean, the staff can correct me.
Okay, I had a question mark there and I wasn't sure, like in my notes.
That is just simply advertising costs throughout the year. So I'm not aware.
So we're.
No, I don't recall.
Okay, all right. No, that's great. I wasn't sure. I had a question mark next to it, so I wanted to just clarify that one. Also, I'm wondering, and I know the deadline is tomorrow, but where do we sit right now on Canada Day applications? We have a pretty sizable budget for that, and I'm wondering if is it too soon to even discuss at this point?
Well, I haven't done any type of in-depth review, of course, because really I wouldn't look at that beyond the deadline, until beyond the deadline. What I do know is that typically we would receive anywhere from 9 to 10 applications per year. And so far we've received 3. So we've received 3 applications for funding. The deadline is tomorrow. And I believe I've heard from 1 or 2 groups that have physically said that they're not putting on an event.
Okay. All right. So my next questions are kind of like, I guess, more general in nature. The Safe Restart funds. I'm hearing that, maybe there's some certainty that's come out around some of that. I'm wondering specifically about the ability to allocate money to transit from that amount of money. Do we have anything on that yet?
So I know there's been some communication that's come out, but I'm not sure, 100% sure how clear the communication has been. So there's been some talks going on between municipalities. So from my perspective, I don't feel like there's any much clear direction to be able to use that money in a different way or reallocate it in a different way. What I can say is that through our year-end process, we're going to have to do a costing analysis of all the expenses or loss in revenue that pertain to COVID. And we're going to have to report that separately to our auditors and separately to the province in our yearly reporting in the fall. So that basically we would have to go through that process before we would feel comfortable in giving any kind of an amount that says, yeah, okay, well, we're going to have some money that we can shift around here. The unknown, the biggest unknown is the transit money, like we talked about.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Again, municipalities are unsure what to do with that money or what approach is going to be acceptable by the province. And what we're hearing is that there's some municipalities, like, so for our municipality, we don't own and operate a transit service, but we do fund the transit service. So we're also hearing that there's municipalities that got transit money that don't fund the transit service at all. So there's some unknowns as to whether that money is going to have to pay back, if that money can be given to a transit service, or if that money can be used in general operations for other purposes beyond just the general fund.
Okay. All right, and then my next question was related to the gas tax, the doubling of the gas tax. So right now, I don't know that that's reflected in our capital plan, or I guess I'd like to hear from staff if there's been some thought put into how to take advantage of that opportunity. I don't know who I'm asking that question to, really. Whoever would like to chime in.
I guess I'll speak again, but so the gas tax, I mean, I guess we're all aware that the gas tax is going to be topped up this year. It had happened once previously, I guess, since I've worked for the municipality. We hadn't at the time treated it in any different type of way beyond, of course, accepting the gracious doubling of the gas tax funds and putting it into our reserve. And of course, we have projects that are ongoing or that are slated to come out of gas tax in the current fiscal year, or in this new budget, I guess. It doesn't mean to say that the council can't use that money, to do other projects, but generally speaking, they would be viewed and added to the capital plan either at budget deliberation time or explored at another point during the year as a particular project would come up, I guess, is how we would deal with it. But we did receive word, I think it was just today, I received an email that basically confirmed that we were going to get the top up.
The doubling of the gas.
Yeah, it's not exactly double, but it's basically
right.
double. Yeah.
Okay. And it needs to be, I'm sure, committed, spent in this fiscal year. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
No?
Again, I just got the email today, but basically they're encouraging, I think, municipalities. I think the idea is that the money is going to be used to boost the economy all across Canada, right? So if there are projects that are on the docket that potentially councils were holding back from doing in the past, I think this approach might be that the councils might now say, okay, well, let's do that project. So I don't think it has to be spent in the current year. The last time it happened, we received the money, we put it into reserve, and it went into our bank, basically.
Okay, that's great news. Okay, the next question that I had was related to the current projections for the past fiscal year, so 2020, 2021. It's looking like we're going to have a surplus. Well, I mean, and I recognize this is before audit, but $310,000 is what it's coming to. Do you anticipate a big change in that, Jason, when the audit is done?
Yeah, so I guess when we discuss internally projections and the amount of work that goes into the projection and the complexity, I guess, of the financial statements, it's really difficult to give a strong weighting on a projection from our opinion, because when you're talking big dollars in numbers, any one specific change or entry can have a massive impact on a projected surplus. So and part of that reason is that, so part of it is that that projection doesn't include year-end entries, whether it be in pension swings or sick time accruals or retirement, just different types of benefits and stuff. So one swing can mean the difference between actually having a surplus, in my opinion, and being in a deficit position. So again, until, you know, we're working through the year end right now, I really, even myself, you know, don't have a gauge as to what the number is going to be until basically the auditors are slated to come in and do the field work. So, you know, if you look at past history, yes, we've posted a surplus in the past few years. The pension swing in 2 particular years caused a really high pension swing, you know, to the tune of 300-some thousand in 1 year. And then the opposite year, it came back. So again, I just want to caution that to weigh heavily on what the projected surplus may or may not be is a difficult approach. But beyond that, I mean, the bigger question is really just, there's 3 avenues, you know, to balance a budget. 1 is to increase the taxes, 2 is to reduce the expenses, and 3 is to fund the deficit through the operating reserve. So any of those approaches would work, or a combination thereof. The reality is that if we end up having a surplus in the March 31st, 2021 fiscal year, the surplus automatically has to get transferred from operating reserve.
To operating reserve, yeah.
To operating reserve.
Yeah.
So really, it's just an in and an out. So if you end up posting a surplus this year, and you need to budget to take from reserve in the budget that we're talking about tonight, one equals the other, I guess. So really,
and
go ahead.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. I guess at this point, is like, that's a pretty significant surplus in my mind. You know what I mean? And it would take a big adjustment to bring that to a negative or a zero even, or, you know, from $310,000. So I guess that's what I was just trying to wrap my head around, is if we decide we're going to fund things from operating, I just wanted to have an understanding of, you know, what's the likelihood of us, or what level of surplus might we be looking at this year.
So the unknown right now is something that has come up in a recent conversation through audit committee. So I can't remember the exact date, but we had a pre-planning audit committee back, I think it might have been in March. I can't even remember, the date escapes me, but one thing that was brought up by the auditors at that meeting that staff were aware of that was coming down the pipe was what we call a post-closure retirement liability. So under PSAB, the Public Sector Accounting Board, and the rules, municipalities at March 31st, 2021 are being forced to record a post-landfill closure liability. So currently, this is the unknown, I guess, for our year end this year. Typically, I would agree with you, Warden, that, you know, if we're projecting a surplus of 310, you know, maybe not that exact amount, but we could be safe that we would post a surplus, I guess, of some kind. The downfall with this post-closure liability is that we have on our capital plan a project to close the landfills, and the amount that it's slated on at today is $2.3 million. So I'm in discussions with the province now and trying to set up a meeting with them to decide how that's going to work at year end. But my understanding from the auditors is that $2.3 million is supposed to be expensed off in the March 31st, 2021 year end. So if that's the case, there is a possibility that we may see a large deficit on our year end. And then the risk or the downfall it's one thing to post a deficit, but it's one thing to post a deficit, but the con to that is that when a municipality posts a deficit, you're required by the MGA to fund it in the subsequent year. So the downfall would be is that we only, you know, we talk about that landfill closure reserve, we only have 400,000 approximately in that reserve. So we wouldn't have the funds in our landfill closure reserve to fund that deficit. So basically what's happening is that the province is forcing municipalities to record on their balance sheet, you know, liabilities that are very large in nature. Not saying that you're going to actually undertake the project right now, but actually put it on your balance sheet so that council and everybody is basically aware that the liability does exist.
So how are other municipalities handling that? Because I can't imagine we're the only one in an infrastructure deficit.
That's right. So my first point of contact has been with the province. So I'm trying to set up a meeting with them. And it's no discredit to them. It's been taking a while. All their staff are working from home. We've been trying to touch base with them over the last few weeks, and it just has not happened yet. So I haven't really entered into any conversations with other municipalities, but of course I plan to. But again, the field work for our audit is happening in June. So by the time that the statements are finalized in September, that'll all have to be sorted out, right?
Right. And some of that is outside of our control. I mean, if, well, it's all outside of our control. If that's what we're being,
Yes.
Mandated to do, then that's, yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So that I'm sure I have more to add, but I wanted to kind of get through those right off the bat. Does anybody else have any other questions?
No, I just have one, Jason, back on that topic. You just said we have $400,000 allocated to the closure right now.
Yeah.
So how much do we have though in reserves, let's say for the water treatment system?
For the water utility?
Yeah.
Basically right now there's 0 in reserve.
But we do have other monies in reserve. You're just talking about
right.
those. Yeah.
So the question was water reserve. There's
yeah,
not.
no, I know. Yeah.
Sorry, in water sewer in our reserves, I guess. So can we move our money from our reserves if forced to fund the closure of the
Well, this is the unknown, Deputy Warden, right? Is because I've explained to you guys that we probably have $7.5 million in reserves in total. That's including gas tax, landfill, operating reserves, capital reserves. So let's just say if we're forced to record this post-closure landfill liability of $2.3 million, and the province would take the position that you would have to fund that deficit in the next year, then the argument is, do we have to use our other reserves to fund the post-closure landfill liability?
Mhm.
That's something that obviously we wouldn't want to do, because then basically you're using other reserves to fund something that you're not even going to do yet. And it really just takes the money from your operating reserves and transfers it in from your reserves and transfers it to your operations, when I think, I could be wrong, but I think we're planning to look at closing the landfills over time as opposed to right now. So I'm really unsure as to how this works. I know the deadline is March 31st, 2021. So basically I'm going to rely on the auditors in the province to give me direction as to how this should be treated.
Right. And I agree 100% is, realistically, we like to do it over several years, but I guess if push comes to shove and we do have to use the money, we do have the reserves available. Not that we want to use them, but we do have them available so that we don't show a deficit on the books, right?
Well, it's not really how it works. You don't get out of showing the deficit. You record the deficit in the year. So basically what the province is forcing us to do is to expense off the project, as if we had incurred the expense this year, but it doesn't mean you actually have to go ahead and do the project. It's just recording a liability on your balance sheet to say, hey, at some point in time, the municipality is going to undertake a project of approximately $2.3 million to close their landfills. And once it gets on the books, I guess I could be wrong, but I think the intention is just to move it along to encourage municipalities to get those liabilities dealt with, right?
Okay.
There is another option there too. I think we could probably do the project and borrow the money.
Correct. Yeah.
And you can borrow from your own reserves, right? You can borrow from yourself. You can borrow from your operating reserves if you needed to.
Yeah, you can borrow reserves. There's some rules around charging interest rates at market and stuff like that.
Yeah, but at least you're paying yourself interest versus somebody, versus a financial institution or whatever.
Yeah. Again, and just to beat a dead horse over again, maybe is, but again, when you look at the level of reserves we have, to the general taxpayer, it's nice to say, well, geez, Richmond has $7.5 million in reserves. But when you look at the liabilities we have coming due and the projects from an environmental perspective that we're going to be on the docket, I would say our reserves are probably a lot lower than what they have to be, or should be, I guess.
What is the potential? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't think no one's getting excited about our reserves, Jason, to be honest, when you look at what we got to replace. yeah, no one's jumping up and down over 7.5 million in reserves for sure.
Yeah. What's our potential gas tax income then total for this fiscal?
Your
Given
gas
that's
tax
double.
income?
Well, the amount that we might be able to, to take from the gas tax fund.
Well, council can choose to take whatever they want from the gas tax fund in any given year. It's just a reserve.
I mean, what will we get from the?
Okay,
from the fund? Yeah.
It's 900 and some thousand, so it's almost $1 million.
That's the double.
That's the double. Yeah, it's generally
Yeah.
around 495,000 per year. And again, I don't have the email. Actually, I can find
Yep.
it.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay.
But using
All
from
right.
the gas tax reserve, Warden has to meet some of those criteria, correct?
Yes, it needs to be infrastructure related. Mm-hmm.
So rounded to the nearest thousand, it's 972,000.
Okay.
So I think, it's probably worth noting, right, Jason, like if we decided that we were going to balance our budget out by taking it a reserve, we'd be taking it of our operating reserve out of that tax rate stabilization fund, if you will, that set at like at the end of last year was like 2.7 million or something. So we'd be eating away at some of that.
Correct. Yeah.
And if we post a
Right.
surplus, just refresh my memory. I feel like you've already told me this twice, but if we post a surplus this year, which pot does it go to?
I've been putting it in the infrastructure reserve under operating.
Under operating, but infrastructure.
The next line, yeah. So really, one equals the other, right? So some municipalities will take the position to try to, use that angle that they're going to budget the prior year surplus. I don't really look at it that way because it just overcomplicates it. It's really is, we have to balance the budget, and if a tax rate increase or reduction in expenses aren't going to work, then basically your only other option is to pull from the reserve. And if you end up posting a surplus, that money's going in the reserve also.
Yeah. So for us, our last plan was basically to increase taxes so that we would have the ability to take to actually create a surplus, which we had intentions of then pushing off into the landfill closure.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, basically so we had increased the taxes by 3 cents on our draft budget.
Yeah.
We had other allocations, as you know, to go into capital reserve because our recommendation was to build our capital reserves as well.
That's right.
Because they're very low compared to the operating reserve.
Yeah.
And then really, I think as it stands today, we only have money going into the landfill closure.
Yes.
Yes,
Originally, we were putting
that's
in the two of them, and then eventually we did stop with the capital and we moved just to the landfill. Yeah.
Right.
I gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah. And so do you have, I know that we did talk about this as well, and I think that was why we ended up settling on just moving money into the landfill, but like, is it, and again, I don't know all the ins and outs, but is there a way to create a surplus by funding a deficit with the operating reserves?
Yeah.
And that part of our budget is to transfer to landfill? I think the answer is no, but you tell me. Can we take from one, because they're, operating and capital reserves. So can we draw down the operating reserves, but boost the capital reserves in a budget?
Yeah, so I think my understanding is that you can take from operating reserve and transfer it to capital, but I don't believe you can go in the reverse.
Okay.
And then if you're looking to transfer money between capital reserves, I believe that's okay.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
If we wanted to move from capital to landfill closure or something, we could do that.
Right. I don't know why you would necessarily do that until, let's say, you might be ready to actually pull the trigger on a project.
Right.
You said, the landfill closure reserve is separated from the gas tax and the general capital reserve because you're mandated to do that by the province.
Yeah.
And you're mandated to transfer something into landfill closure reserve every year.
Okay, and so if we found ourselves like we're ready to pull the trigger to do the landfill closure for whatever reason, we could post a budget where we would pull out of our, let's say, our infrastructure or our tax rate stabilization budget operating wise and put it into landfill if we had to.
Yeah, you could do that. I think generally speaking, I think a motion would probably suffice. So
okay.
we would put it on the capital plan, and if the intention was to pull some money from other reserves beyond the landfill closure, we could totally do that, I think. So
Okay.
yeah, so there is some leeway there, but generally speaking is that there's more flexibility on using operating reserve funds than there is from capital reserve funds. So that's why I think you'll see that the operating reserves are much larger than the capital.
Yeah. So I just have one more question, and then I'm going to step back and let others ask questions. Sorry. So my last question, I think, when we chatted with the folks from TIR, they talked about these roads that they maintain for us, and and we talked a little bit about what service they provide for the money that we pay them in terms of, and they talked about grading them a couple of times a year, and they talked about snow clearing, but they did also talk about something that I don't recall, but I'm not saying it wasn't, just saying I don't recall. So now I'm asking the question that improvements to these roads are 50-50 cost split, and that sometimes what will happen is TIR will come to us and say, hey, we have crews in that area working on something. So I don't, there's none of those pieces in our capital plan, but I just want to, so I'm not saying I want to add that in or not. What I'm saying is, I think we talked about this when we talked about the capital plan, that unlike our regular operating budget, that we do throughout the year have the ability to adjust approved projects within the capital plan, even if they're not already there, if something came up like that. Right. So if they came up and they said, hey, we want to do this road, this road, this road, we'll do it 50-50 with you. It's 100,000 or 200,000. And we say, hey, that's a great way to spend some of our gas tax money, for example. Through the year, are we able to make that decision?
Yeah, so I'll start that conversation, and then maybe Chris can chime in on that, because he's the guru when it comes to the roads, I guess. But the simple answer is yes, is that, the capital plan that the 5-year capital plan that you're approving as part of the budget is basically just that. It's a capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally council's prerogative to add projects to the capital plan at any time. Generally how it works, it's done at capital budgeting time, but it doesn't mean that if a project comes up of any kind and council has an interest in it, and that doesn't mean it just has to pertain to roads, or it could be anything. We can add it to the capital list, and then the discussion becomes more some research from staff, finding out if there are any funding opportunities, and then staff would basically report back to council in a briefing note or a memo of some kind and have the discussion as to, okay, how do we fund this? Can we do it? We want to do it. How do we fund it?
Cool. Okay.
Chris can speak to, I guess, to the potential of cost sharing arrangements.
The way it generally works with the roads, the province would ask the prior fiscal year if the county has any roads they want to consider upgrading. So we would have received an email probably, I don't know, Don, I think they go to you directly, but it would be fair to say it's in the fall.
Yeah, it's around that time.
Yeah, so we get that email. They're asking if we have any roads that we want to have considered for cost sharing. So we would generally, if council had roads, or if we had a road maintenance plan, we would provide them with our list. It may require that they do a traffic study, traffic counts and whatnot. But then that goes to TIR, and if they approve it at that point, then they would be approving a cost share, so that they don't approach us to cost share on a road. It would be us that would approach them.
Okay, because they just told a story of a time when they approached us, but I may have
It hasn't been in my time here.
Okay.
Generally, actually,
So-
the roads they've done, they've paid for them entirely out of their own pockets, even though they were J-class roads. And we're very appreciative of it.
Yes, absolutely appreciative.
Well, not entirely. I believe we paid them $184,000 a year for upkeep and maintenance, and they had very little plowing and salting this year, so they may have been a shoe-in for the.
Yeah, but I don't think he's talking about current stuff, but okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So Chris, if a traffic study or something like that is required, and it was a 50-50 split, that's not going to be eligible under gas tax, though, is it? Because it's not infrastructure. I mean, it's related to infrastructure, but it's not specifically infrastructure.
I think you're right. I think we'd have to do that right out of operating.
And I'm not sure if TIR does that traffic study at a cost to us or not. Where we haven't done it before, I'd have to follow up.
Yeah, I asked them about that specifically for the St. Peter's Grenville Street, Pepperell Street intersection, and I think that was the reply, was that it would be some kind of a cost share. So.
Okay.
I think one of the examples, Chris, wasn't it when they did the road in Petit de Gras, we did the road widening?
Yeah, we did a road widening project there. just while they were doing the paving work. We did get funding from the province. It was through Connect 2 funding, but I honestly can't recall how much the province covered. They may have covered 50% with the funding covering the remainder. There was a gas tax expenditure there. I would have to look back and see, but that wasn't really one of the road upgrade items. It was a specific request, I guess, from the municipality, and the province did provide some funding, but I don't think we're talking the same thing.
Yeah,
We did the
that's
same
fine.
thing.
For me, I was just wondering if it's something that we could change during the year. That's more my concern, because having had that conversation with them got my wheels turning in terms of that. And so it may be something that throughout this fiscal, I may bring to council to consider certain things about that. But so I just wanted to be sure that that was something we could consider throughout the year. So
I would suggest our capital plan for the year is likely already set.
Yeah.
So anything we would consider would likely be for next year. But I mean,
yeah,
we can certainly
but that's
ask.
what I mean, right? To have that conversation for us to bring it to council in the fall so that we could approach them, you know? But the way they had expressed it to me was sort of like, we had 3 roads we wanted to do because we were in the area. We asked if the county was interested in partnering, and the answer was no. So obviously there was something in miscommunication there. I don't, that the way you're saying it makes a heck of a lot more sense to me. So I may have misunderstood. That's all.
No, that may have happened. I can't recall.
And I guess that, Melanie, you bring up a good point, is that, basically what we're doing here is we're just setting a budget. We're setting a capital budget. We're setting an operating budget.
Right.
And business is going to go on, and things are going to come up during the year, and things are going to change, and things
Yep.
aren't always going to be on the
Right.
budget. And you guys, as a council, the governing body, has the ability to adapt, on the fly. And that's what this just is. It's setting a best guess of what we feel our year is going to look like.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the operating budget, we do certainly, it is more of a rarity to make changes to that throughout the year than not.
No, you wouldn't make changes to the budget, but there might be something
Within
that
the
comes up
budget.
during the year
Yes,
that is
that's
brought
right.
to council, and council ends up authorizing an expenditure that we didn't budget for. And, generally speaking, you would check with staff, and staff would investigate as to whether we could pull it off, and then it would, it would happen or it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So I guess I was just saying that the budget is just that, it's a budget.
Yeah, fair point.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I just have one. If we go back to, I don't know, I'm going to say page 4, but I guess line 98 of our, other funds, capital expenditures, general, did we include them in our final, like it was 40,000, we had broke down 40,000 vehicle, 12.5 equipment trailer, 40,000. I want to say that was a study.
It was an accessibility study.
Yeah.
35,000 for chamber upgrades and 30,000 for contingency.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. That follows through from basically the capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that what your
Yeah, I just wanted to know
was?
if it was coming out of our capital funding, or if it was coming out of our capital money, or if it was coming out of our.
Well, it's on our capital plan, but none of those items would be eligible for gas tax or any other type of funding, so it has to come out of operating.
Okay, so
We're
it is
sitting
coming
in the
out of our
operating budget, so they're funded out of operations.
Yeah.
Okay. The
Because
30,000. What's the
like
30,000?
vehicles-
Anybody
Yeah.
remember what the 30,000 contingency was?
It's for just unexpected.
But is that included into our
Items.
60,500 of our?
No.
Okay.
It's like basically
No,
if
so
something goes sideways.
Yeah, so the
Am I right in
30,000
saying that?
contingency, I think Deputy Warden, you're referring to grant funding or funding contributions. What this is strictly capital work. So what we do is we budget a contingency in our general and the arena for work that may come up during the year. So I'll give you, I think I gave an example at an earlier meeting, is if our HVAC system at the municipality blew tomorrow and we needed to put a new one in, and the cost was 15,000, we would post it there.
Okay.
It would be part of that 30,000. And because it's like an emergency repair, we leave room for staff leeway, a little bit of room. It's not a lot of room. It doesn't take long to spend 30,000, but basically that's where that would go out of.
Okay. So I guess I'll ask I think Councillor Brent Sampson or Sean Sampson, neither one of you, I think, has said too much. I didn't know. I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask questions if you have any. If not, that's okay too. I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity.
Oh, good. I just, like, I was thinking if we decide where we want to be at with whatever the rate, then maybe we can work to that point. Otherwise, we're just,
Yep.
we're a half, 45 minutes in. I don't know how much further ahead we are. So if we can decide, even as a group, where we want to be, like 1 cent, 2 cents, whatever, and come to that conclusion, then maybe it gives us a starting point to get somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all just had questions we needed to have answered before we could kind of decide on something like that. So I'm feeling a lot better about understanding some of those questions that I had, for sure. So, Councillor Sean Sampson, did you have any other questions?
No questions. I mean, for me, just some points and some takeaways and some concerns, so we can discuss that as we go along. So
yeah. Okay. So I guess at this point, then the what we had proposed, or I guess you know, from our May 5th meeting, was a tax increase of 3 cents. And so, you know, I guess I wanted to share some rationale, you know, from my perspective as to, you know, why I've been second guessing that kind of an increase. And a lot of it relates to, I mean, I have been doing some consultations in my community just with, you know, folks who had advised me from day one when I said I would be interested in running. And I'm really, you know, I am concerned that, you know, we're seeing our COVID numbers in the province kind of coming down, which is really great. 33 today, it's so wonderful. But our numbers in the eastern zone are heading up, and it's, you know, they're not following that same trend. I'm a little concerned about ongoing what that's going to mean in terms of restrictions. There's no way to predict that. I get it. But certainly I guess my confidence level was shaken a little bit. You know, also thinking about our unemployment rate, the impact that it's had on our cultural sector and our nonprofits, rotational workers. I'm really concerned about the cost of housing right now. The market's on fire. If you're a seller, this is a good time to be selling property in Richmond County or selling houses in Richmond County. But the impact, you know, on the other side is that, you know, it's the cost of living here is going up for many people, and we've got over, I think, somewhere near half of our population who are 55 years of age and older. So it's, you know, those are just some of the things that are, I guess, have been playing on my mind. Even, you know, I was looking at an article, I think yesterday, about the Bank of Canada warning that interest rates are probably going to be on the rise, and all that good stuff. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. We are seeing, you know, the vaccination rollout's going really well, and hopefully we'll have a really prosperous, or I guess a near normal one vaccine type of summer. That's certainly my hope. But that is kind of where my head was at when we were starting to talk about, okay, what are we looking at in terms of an increase for, you know, the number of cents we're going to be increasing the tax rate. So my feeling is I'd really like to get that closer to the 1 cent mark. I think it's not realistic to have a zero increase. Like, I would love to be there, because this is an unusual year. I get it, and really difficult on many people. But the fact remains that our tax rate has not increased at a regular and steady rate, and that is where I think we want to be headed, just so that we can keep up with the costs, that kind of thing. But, you know, that being said, I'm wondering, and maybe this is it's sort of a question, I guess, for Jason, if we decided that, you know, we wanted to use some of our operational funds to you know, to cover a deficit, that type of a deficit, if we, you know, would we, in terms of our budget presentation, would we be looking at a, you know, where we have zero going into our reserves now, would we be looking at a negative number there? Like, how would that work in terms of how our budget is presented if we decided to fund a deficit with that type of thing?
So basically how it would work is kind of what I said earlier at the start, I guess, is that So the landfill closure, the amount of money that we're putting into landfill closure, although council gets to pick the amount that goes in there, which I think the amount is 111,265 right now that's slated to go into landfill closure. Although that number can't be zero, it doesn't mean that you can't reduce the number to deal with any potential reduction in the current draft of 3 cents. But being that you have to have a number, whatever that number would be, could be decided by council, and then whatever the tax rate drop is. So let's say if you drop the taxes from 3 to 2 cents as an increase, we have to pick up, 90,806.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about getting to 1 cent, then we need to pick up $181,612 somewhere in the budget somewheres. And then if there's nowhere where it can be picked up, or there's areas that we feel need to stay, then basically whatever that shortfall is, we would just budget for a transfer from operating reserves. So it would
So when you're saying, I just want to be clear, Jason, like when you're saying a transfer from operating reserves, like that's kind of where my head is at, because I'm looking at the general government services sheet, and I'm specifically looking at line 77, right? Like if, I'm wondering, can would we introduce a negative number on that line if we were in trying to cover that deficit? No.
So that line is meant to transfer an amount to reserves. We're talking about a transfer from reserve, which would be found in the revenue section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just looking to see where I can find it here. It's somewhere, I thought.
So that would be on our revenue side under other revenue from own sources, transferred from reserve,
So
due to from reserve.
It's on the revenue tab on page 6 of 8, and it's line 58. It's called transfer due to from reserve.
Yeah.
So if,
Okay.
let's just say we left everything equal tonight, and you guys told us that we want to go down to 2 cents. And now, of course, the difference is 90,806, and everything else, every other number in the budget was perfect. We would take the 90,806 and we would plop it on that line. And then we would reduce the residential and commercial and resource revenue by the 1 cent. And then we would rebalance the budget.
Okay. Okay. That's exactly what I was wondering. Thank you. I just needed clarity on where that was coming from.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. So any other comments then?
Well, for me, Madam Morden, Marquette, it's nice to see that you're talking 2 cents, 1 cent. I think this 3 cents, we started at 6, so we worked very hard to cut that in half. That was encouraging, but again, as you mentioned, the last couple of weeks myself, I've been talking to my constituents and going around in my district and getting some Facebook messages and getting some phone calls. And just yesterday, people have seen it on the Hawk and seen it on the Reporter and asking about tax increases and all that stuff, right? And as Jason mentioned earlier, when it comes to budgets and annual operating plans, there's 2 ways, to balance a budget. If you can't get the increased revenue, you got to save.
Mm-hmm.
You got to save it somewhere, right? So for me, when it comes down to me promoting this budget to my district, the best way to promote something, in my opinion, is that you got to show its value, right? And when it comes to showing the value of 3 cents compared to the investment we're making into our community, for me, it's concerning, right? When you look at these numbers, most of our expenses are incurred yearly expenses. There's no way of going away from that. You're going to see that on an expense sheet every year. But some of those expenses are investments, right? Some of those investments are going to be investments on a yearly basis, right? When you look at our contribution funding list, you got Straight Area Transit, you got St. Martha's, you got Straight Richmond, you got the St. Anne Center, you got
early childhood education, Cape Breton, recruiting, you got Dr. Kingston, you know, that and a few other ones equal 239.5. Those expenses are investments, and those investments you're going to see on a yearly basis, right? What concerns me is that out of that 239.5, we pushed it up to 300,000. So we gave ourselves a cushion of 60,500 over and beyond the 239.5. So that 239.5 of yearly important investments reflect 1.67% of our annual budget, right? That's the 239.5. The 60,500 reflects 0.43 of a percent. It's less than half of a percent that we're holding back in the hopes that we can invest in other community investments like infrastructure, tourism, recreation, all that stuff, right? 0.43, it's not even half of a percent, right? So from that 60,500, I thought, and we all thought, and we all agreed on a district fund that councillors had in the past, right? So we agreed that we take 25,000 and put it into the district fund, 5,000 each. So if I thought maybe, you know, it's not 85 anymore. It's not going from 60 to 85. It's going from 60 to 30 because that 25,000 is now in the district fund. So now that 35,000 is 0.18 of an investment, 1/5 of an investment in our community. And our district fund of 5,000 per district is 4/100 of a percent in case we want to invest in something in our district. All the while, we're asking to put taxes up 4% to the taxpayers. I'm going to have a hard time promoting this and, you know, supporting this when it comes to relaying this message to my district, right? That's concerning for me, right? So I just wanted to share those numbers with everybody here on this call, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Sean. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna be the one to, I guess, be the bearer of bad news, or I know this come up in the past, and it's definitely a heartfelt subject, but you know, when I look at the numbers, kind of like Sean, why I look at 0.43, I'm going with the full 60,000 and hoping that we found money elsewhere, but when I look at 0.43 of a percent, which, like he says, is less than half a percent, and I was trying to look in the past, and I know staff is up for salary increases, but this being the year that has been, it's hard to justify in one hand to give a 4 or 5% staff increase, and in the other hand to come out and give a 3 to 4%, I guess, increase in taxes to the I guess to the people, to the constituents. It's for me, I'll be honest, like you know, I kind of like Sean, I go to the public and I get their thoughts and I get their views, and that's a bitter pill for people to swallow, especially when I knock on doors of hairdressers or barbers or, you know, people who used to travel out west and lost their jobs or because of COVID aren't working. And, you know, us as counselors and municipal staff are getting a guaranteed income for the year. And, you know, I guess for me, that's one of the avenues that we have to look at as counselors is, you know, what if any is a possibility of an increase or no increase this year for I guess for pay. When I broke it down, and I didn't get a chance to call Jason today, and I apologize, but when I broke it down, it almost works out to be on some a $2.80 an hour increase. I don't know anybody in any organization that I work in or that I've worked in that receives a $2.80 an hour increase in pay. it works out to be almost $6,000 a year. And when you break that down to a 40-hour week, it's, you know, like I say, almost $3 an hour. That's a hefty salary increase overall across the table. Again, that's just one of my concerns, and I think that's one of the avenues that we, unfortunately, that we have to look at tonight.
So I'd like to make a comment on that, actually. I was listening to Councillor Sampson's comments about investing in our community, investing in our county, and I was saying to myself, "Wow, that's great. We're going to invest in our county. Shouldn't we be investing in our staff as well?" I think it's pretty important that we invest in the community, and the numbers that Councillor Sampson was throwing across were very minute and small, and percentage-wise, very tiny. And when you're talking about a $60,000 amount added to funding contributions, is in excess of the amount that we had put forward with respect to merit totals. So as you speak of those amounts, and you talk about the minuteness of those percentages, the merit increases themselves are even smaller than that yet based on the total budget. So what a great way to invest in your staff. I mean, we are the ones that are right there in the front line dealing with all these issues. You know, it's pretty important to have that investment in your staff and make them aware that they're worthy, that they do a good job, because it's only going to help the county, it's only going to help the residents, it's only going to help council and everybody. So yeah, I'm kind of taken back by the fact that there's such a huge drive, and of course I don't know where the deputy warden is getting these numbers with respect to $2.80 per hour. I'm not sure how he figures that out, because the majority of staff is on salary, so we don't get paid by the hour, we get paid salary. So that's kind of I'm not sure where he gets these numbers. So yeah, pretty discouraging if that's the way it needs to go. And of course, we suspected that this was the issue all along. But at the same time, if there's a need to drop that tax rate, I'm sure that if you set an amount and you set a tax rate increase that you guys want, that you guys specifically think is doable. Now, 1 cent of a tax increase on a $100,000 assessment is $10 a year. I find that very difficult, that residents cannot afford $10 a year. If it's 2 cents, it's $20 a year. If it's 3 cents, it's $30 a year. It amounts to $30 a year divided by 12 is $5. $5 a month. I mean, it's not even that. It's even less than that. So I mean, I'm having a hard time understanding how this is this great burden on the taxpayers. We have municipalities all around us that are in much better financial position than us, that have better reserves, bigger budgets, that have just as recent as a month ago announced a 6 cent increase on their tax rate, and it's passed. It's a done deal. We're sitting here with a really, really deflated tax rate, and it should be higher. It should actually be higher. And like I said, it hasn't been increased over the years. Not any fault of the staff, because we've continually pushed council to increase tax rates to try to give ourselves more money to be able to provide these services. It should not be, and like I say, it is still up to council, but this is my spiel on why it should not be an issue with merits. There's all kinds of ways that we can, and I said it before. I had a discussion with the warden just a couple of days ago, expressing my concerns about what may happen if merits do not go through. We, as a senior staff last year, removed the merits because we did experience a great loss last year, but that loss is not there this year. And we took it on the chin last year as a staff, and this year it was something that the majority of the staff is expecting. And to let that go for 1 year, I think that the staff deserve better.
So I guess if I might, if I can reply first to part of that, I wouldn't mind, since
Sure,
I was the one.
go ahead.
So I guess 2 points on that that I have. And I agree, and I applaud you for, you know, because it is your job, Don, to, for yourself and for your staff to obviously get what is coming to them, or get what they feel that, you know, they deserve, and they do work hard all year long. And I do not acknowledge that, you know, staff is worked, you know, graciously with everybody, and in these COVID times have also put themselves out there and put themselves on the forefront. But you also have to understand, there's nobody at the county of Richmond that's underpaid also. So I understand where you're saying about merit increases and staff increases, but you have to understand, from the majority of the public, they make nowhere near what the I guess employees at the county of Richmond make on a day-to-day basis. And in saying that, some of them have lost their jobs, some of them, you know, I understand where you say some, it's only a $10 increase or $20 increase, but obviously according to our tax sale, some people couldn't afford that $10 or $20 because their properties wouldn't be up for taxes either. To me, I guess, you know, and it's of no, you know, it's as disheartening as me to try and take money away or not give staff extra funding. And that's why my first move back several weeks ago was to take money away from ourselves. That's why my first move was to take almost $1,700 away. It was $1,200 clear, but it worked out to be about $1,700 gross, plus our 1% merit that we were entitled to, was to ask all councillors to have that removed from themselves also, because of the year that it is. In addition to that, I also feel, I know you said last year, you know, the county of Richmond took a huge hit, and therefore you didn't put forward, you know, the application or look for the merit increase. And, you know, I applaud all staff for that. In saying that, the rollover that wasn't taken care of just in 1 year, we're still feeling the effects of what happened over a year ago. And unfortunately, that's the, you know, I guess on the upside, everybody working at the municipality, I'm hoping, is grateful that they got the job they got at the municipality. We didn't have to cut positions. We didn't have to cut back on anybody. We're maintaining the status quo that we have working there. And again, they're well paid. I'm not saying for the job they do, because they all work hard, and some of them are overworked, but again, they are well paid for the work they do. And I think to add on that is kind of putting salt on the wound to the 3 or 4 cents that we're looking at increasing the I guess the taxes too.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify one thing actually, and it's interesting the comment you make about nobody at the municipality is underpaid. So you're implying that everybody at the municipality is overpaid. So back in 2017.
No, I don't think so. CAO,
I never heard the word overpaid. No.
No. I didn't say he said it, but you're saying are not underpaid. So the option is either you're equally paid or you're paid more than what you should be paid. That's
fairly paid.
You're well paid.
Yeah. Okay. So back in 2017, when we had an organizational review, the individual that did the organizational review used, I guess, industry standards. So that would be municipalities all across the province. So everybody that was employed with the municipality was fixed on a scale that was determined by professionals, professionals in the field, that said this is what basically the going rate for employees are within municipalities. So yeah, we're getting fair compensation because that's what we do. So these things are not these were not things that were decided by myself or anybody else. They were decided by a third party. So that's how the salaries got chosen. Look, we are very fortunate to work for the county, but it's not all that simple. It's not all that easy, and there's all kinds of things that we face. And
100%. And again,
if a person chooses to be an electrician or whatever, that's fine. We choose to be municipal employees. So, I mean, that can be used against us. And
I wouldn't. And again, you're taking it out of context when you say that I feel that you're overpaid. I never said that. I said I feel that right now it's a hard time for us to pay you extra, considering that the year that everybody else has had, it's a hard justification to pay extra and increase taxes at the same time on the right hand. you have to understand, some people didn't get overpaid this year. Some people had no jobs at all. Some people can't pay for their houses, or they're only paying the taxes on their houses because that's all they can afford. I'm only saying that for job security, people working at the municipality, same as myself working for the department, we have, I guess we have job security. So that's something to be gracious for in itself. You know,
Well, maybe we could ask the 3.5 employees that lost their jobs in 2017.
well, and I guess we could, but that was part of a clawback program that really doesn't affect me.
It wasn't part of a clawback program. It was part of an organizational review.
So sorry, in that organizational review though, was there cutbacks in,
There were cutbacks in employees. 3.5 employees lost their jobs.
correct?
And I would say close to 10 to 12 employees got cut back and lost salary and got reduced.
So my understanding from the org review per Jason's email was that it basically, it did, you know, eliminate positions, but that it aligned the salaries with, you know, basically other municipal units in the province. Am I getting that right, Jason?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And
Yeah,
then,
and from the last email you sent, Jason, when I asked you a question about that organizational review, you replied it was never adopted or approved, correct?
The
Yeah,
review
so
The salary scales were.
No, the organizational review itself was never approved or,
that's right. The
adopted.
whole report was not adopted by council, but I expressed in the email what sections of the report were adopted, and that was a salary scale approved by council.
Right.
That, as the CAO has mentioned, it was based on market research.
Right.
Unfortunately, some people had to lose wages because what the consultant felt was that it was to bring those wages into market. But in saying that, 3.5 full-time positions, as the CAO has alluded, had got cut. And where do you think that the responsibility of all those jobs went? The work didn't end. The work got placed on the shoulders of other staff who already were working full-time for the municipality.
So that extra work fell on other employees.
It got split on employees by default.
So why did those
I'm
3.5 employees lose their job then?
That's a good question.
it was part of the review.
If the work was still there, why were they let go?
Well, I guess there's lots of reasons, but
Okay,
you're asking the wrong person, I guess, as to why.
So, yeah, and I'm just going to stop us there. I don't want us to kind of go too far down that rabbit hole of, you know, I think it's good context for us to understand, but I do want to recognize that Councillor Brent Sampson had some comments he wanted to make. Apologize, Councillor. You can go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I probably lost my place in my head now by now anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just, no, that's fine. I look at it that, you know, this was approved by council. These people working there were basically under the understanding this is how this is going to work going forward. Out of their own leadership, basically, they decided to forego this last year because it was an unusual year. I'm not saying this isn't an unusual year as well. However, things in Richmond County are probably far less affected than a lot of other places where we have less tourism impact here. But it's not to say that those tourism operators and a lot of other operators in the current shutdown aren't being adversely affected, because they are, and it is serious. However, I think we're budgeting for the full year, and to decide when we showed up here 20 minutes ago that we know better, I think it's going to do possibly irreparable damage to relations with staff in general. And this whole county is going to work a lot better if we're all on the same page. And, you know, we can go ahead and we can do this and you can feel good about it for a few days or whatever. But when staff starts deciding that they're not going to go above and beyond anymore, and your constituents start to suffer, I don't know that that's in the best interest of the county. We can say, oh yeah, but we didn't get that extra half a cent on the increase there. But, you know, but now, you know, at 4 o'clock, nobody answers the phone anymore. Nobody will do anything extra. Nobody will go to their way to help. And I won't blame them for a second because they've been disrespected.
So I just want to chime in right quick. I guess, you know, I was brought up with the value of you know, respect the money you've earned. And I'm not saying they don't earn extra or they don't deserve extra, but I am saying that if you're going to lessen your value of work because we have to make a serious judgment call on increase or holding wages where they're at, then municipality probably isn't the place where we want you working anyway.
Well,
You have to.
I'm going to tell you this, Mike. We increased the contributions by over 60,000, which is more than we're looking at here, and nobody's crying about that. We're all okay with that, it seems. But for the people who actually operate the county, we're unsure if we should give them raises. When
No.
It's not that we're giving them raises out of the goodness of our heart here. We're not doing that at all. This was an agreed upon system, and we're coming in and trying to override it as if we know better after the fact.
Okay, so thanks, councillors and Deputy Warden. Appreciate that discussion. I think at this point, you know, I would like to make a bit of a recommendation, and I guess I would, you know, just preface it with the fact that I think what, you know, one of the things that I'm interested in is reducing that tax rate increase in this particular year. Some of what we've talked about here this evening kind of goes against the grain for me, because I believe in investing in people. I believe in saving for the future. And, you know, those are things I was extremely vocal about that since day one coming onto council. And so some of this is a really tough pill to swallow for sure. And to your point, I think Councillor Brent Sampson, you said, you know, we're going to have to make these difficult decisions, and this is absolutely going to be part of it. So at the end of the day, I do think that we are in a time of austerity, and, you know, we as a municipal unit may not be experiencing the hit that we experienced, that we were worried about experiencing last year. I guess that remains to be seen depending on how our audit shakes out. But the bottom line is that the community is very much still in that mode of loss. There, you know, socially, financially, there's a lot of trouble, you know, that's being experienced, difficulty being experienced by our constituents. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that, you know, to Deputy Warden's point, you know, council did decide to take part of that hit. I think it came to somewhere just under $12,000, you know, spread amongst the five of us. At this point, you know, I guess what I would suggest is, you know, let's look at a way to get our tax rate increase closer to the 1 cent mark if we can. That would be my proposal. I think, you know, also to the Deputy Warden's point, I think that we should all be sharing a little bit of this hit, you know, no question about that 1% cost of living increase for staff, but maybe we could look at a lesser percentage for this year, and then let's use this year to establish some really strong policy around it. What we have is a salary scale system that predated the org review, is what I understood from your message. No, that's not right? Okay, so but it was approved, but let's put some policy around it and maybe turn it into an annual, because I think part of the challenge is that every 2 years, it seems like a much bigger jump, and that can be, you know, that can be kind of unnerving for some folks. So my suggestion is, you know, that merit increase is going to cost us, you know, $48,000. You know, if we look at $24,000 instead, and then take all those projects that we were talking about that are our one-time costs, the strategic plan, Evanston School Assessment, Trails Study, Accessibility Study, and the Leachate Study, those come to $104,500. Let's add that in from, you know, the revenue line 58, the transfer back from reserves. It would leave us with a shortfall of about $27,500. We have a $35,000 budget line for chamber upgrades, and let's take a phased-in approach to that. We absolutely want to enable our council chambers to have public participation, and that's going to require some investment, but we don't necessarily have to do it all at once. So if we did that, between that, you know, council taking, you know, having established that we're going to take the hit, take a little bit of a hit, staff joining us in solidarity with that, like maybe reducing our chamber upgrades, taking from our operational reserves, it would leave us with about, I think, $24,000, and maybe we could take that from the landfill closure for the time being. That would bring us to $180,000 essentially, to reduce that tax rate by 2 cents. So we've got a little bit of a hit that's coming to the public, a little bit of a hit that's coming to councillors, a little bit of a hit that would be coming to staff. That's kind of, you know, that how I see maybe a way forward for us. And I'd invite some comments on that, or if anybody else has suggestions, I'd be super happy to hear it. But I think to Councillor Sampson's point, Brent Sampson, we need a plan and a target to move forward.
Yeah, and I mean,
Gordon, if I may, I've had my hand up for a while, and I'd just like to.
I'm sorry, Councillor Melanie Sampson. I didn't see you there.
I don't want to interrupt, but I really,
yeah.
And like I'm hearing all of the numbers that you're saying, but I have to be very truthful with you. Like I'm struggling to hear all of them because, you know, we've had multiple conversations about this merit increase. We've had multiple conversations about the merit of the merit increases in terms of you know, the morale of our staff, the people, as our CAO has said, are on the front lines. And I guess I'd like to publicly say, you know, thanks to Don, and I'm calling him tomorrow to thank him anyway, but you did the right thing there to talk about how this will really affect your staff. This is the stuff that we all need to hear. And I think we all know, but we need to hear it. And I guess I'm not adverse to us bringing the tax rate increase down from 3 cents to 1 or 2 or whatever. I was also okay with us leaving it at 3, but am I okay with us working to bring it down? Of course I am. I also have constituents who are struggling, and, you know, whether it's $10 or $20 or $30, you know, whatever we can do to help them out, that's fine. But I'm going to be completely frank about this. The merit increase, in any part of that merit increase being part of where we're going to recoup our cent or two of taxes, it is just not something I want to entertain. Now, I might get outvoted. You know, Councillor Brent Sampson is, you know, based on his comments, I think he and I are on the same page. You know, we may get outvoted, and we'll accept that. I mean, I'll accept it. I'll have no choice, and I suspect he will as well. But we've voted on this already in budget deliberations, because we talked about this over and over again until finally, you know, I think it was me that sort of said, let's have a vote. You know, are we doing this merit or not? And we voted to do the merit. No. So, you know, people have, yes, we voted.
Yes, no, we did. Mike,
sorry, if I might interject right quick, and they can go back on the minutes. I brought up the reduction in the merit increase. I believe Jason come forward with a different solution around the merit increase. We didn't vote on the merit increase. We voted on that other solution. I still wasn't comfortable in giving that 5% increase. So if you go back and check the notes, no, there was no vote on the merit increase.
Well,
Mike,
okay.
No, but seriously though, we had voted this. I recall what Melanie's talking about, and whether or not you were paying attention, I'm not sure. But I felt like we had gotten through this.
100%.
We're beating a dead horse. And you know what? If you want to do it, go ahead. But just know it's likely going to cost the county a lot more in the long run when you start thinking absenteeism. And then if they decide to unionize down the road, it's going to cost us a heck of a lot more than that. And you guys better be ready to wear it. I'm just going to tell you.
Well, again, Brent, like I said earlier, if, you know, we are willing to take a bite at the beginning, and I'm hoping staff doesn't look at this as a personal attack, because it's the furthest thing away from it. My job is,
we're saying that we're saying we want to
as a counselor.
No, we're saying we want to keep the money away from them instead of somewhere else.
What?
Yeah, Mike, if we were cutting everything, that would be one thing. But we're adding to a bunch of, we want to give to a bunch of community organizations, which is a great idea. That's fantastic. But if we're doing it on the backs of our staff, that's not fair at all. Now,
okay,
hold on. Hold on.
Yeah.
You talk for 20 minutes. We let you talk in circles. So just let me finish here.
Yeah.
You got to realize the impact of what you might be doing here. And you know, if this costs everybody in the long run, it's not a positive for the county as a whole. We're supposed to be looking out for the county as a whole. And I don't see that. If staff decides that they're just not motivated anymore because they don't feel appreciated, then, well, I don't blame them.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sampson. Councillor Melanie Sampson. I'm just going to go back to Councillor Melanie Sampson. I think she was trying to speak. Sorry.
So I mean, again, we'll agree to disagree, Deputy Warden, in terms of whether or not we voted on this, but we're back to this. We're in the same spot we were that day. And so again, I would suggest to not belabor the point here. Let us have a vote and decide if this merit increase is on or off the table in terms of our budget. And then we'll work from there. But until we determine what the majority of councillors want to do we want to give the full merit? Do we want to give the half a merit? Do we want to give none of a merit? Until we have that decision, we're going to go in circles about this because it is probably the most contentious thing we were talking about. And to Councillor Brent Sampson's point, was my feeling as well. We're asking, it's okay for us to ask ourselves to try to reduce the impact on the tax rate by, you know, not taking $100 a month or not taking our cost of living increase or whatever. That's okay. We made a decision about ourselves, but we're making a decision about people's pays that have been previously agreed upon. And this is a huge budget, and there are lots of other areas that we could look to shave and adjust to get to the number we want to get to. I am still, again, I am struggling in terms of why this is the number that has been determined to be the easiest of all to shave. We've added money to those funding pieces. We've put money in for studies and all of these other pieces. But again, I would just concur with Councillor Brent Sampson. If we don't have people who feel valued, they have, and again, especially when I heard that they gave up the merit increases themselves last year of their own accord without a request of council, like they're just asking for what they were deserving last year. So that's all I want to say about that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson. Deputy Warden, did you have?
I do. So obviously, I'm sure staff is sitting there cursing me up and down and thinking I'm taking this as a personal attack. And it's the furthest thing from my mind, 100%. I mean, honestly, if I was all about the money, and, you know, back to Councillor Brent Sampson's comment about the previous council adopted this and accepted this, I personally don't like anything the previous council did. Number one, they put us in the hole. Number two, they had nothing in our reserves. Number three, I mean, if you actually look and you go back over from previous council, councillors are due for what? I think it's a $20,000 or $30,000 increase this year. Just councillors alone, if you go back to the budget that they recommended. So again, yeah, like if you go back to the numbers, there's one in there, and unfortunately I can't find it right now, but there was an increase in the warden stipend, there was an increase in the councillor stipend, all for this year. Now, they didn't make it back in, but that was projected in their budget from previous year.
What are you talking about?
I'm just
was
saying,
that part of the org review?
Not really clear on what
that doesn't exist.
No, you're
doesn't
making
exist.
stuff up in a thin air.
Deputy Warden, you know, with all due respect, I just want to say, and I don't really want to talk on the whole merit thing a whole lot, because really that's the job of the CAO. But I just want to throw out there with all due respect that you continue to say that this is not personal. However, you're clearly making it personal. So I just want to be clear here. We all understand that as you can say as many times as you want, that you're not making it personal. It's completely clear, and I believe it's the feeling of all staff, that it is now personal.
So,
as Melanie Sampson has said, we've had this discussion 4 or 5 times already in budget meetings, and Melanie and Brent are right. We voted on this at a previous meeting, and my understanding is that you and Sean both agreed that if we could get the tax rate down from 4 cents to 3 cents, that you would be okay leaving the merits in. And that is the direction we got, and that's how the draft budget sits today. So again, I agree with Melanie Sampson. Why are we making this more difficult than it needs to be? If you want to take the merits out and you're making this personal, just cut them. It's very simple. It's not complicated.
So I'm not looking at making it personal. And again, it's not personal. What I'm doing is representing my people in my constituency. And you know, it's fine. You can react as you want, but in 4 years time, I'll be knocking on the doors again, and there'll be people. So I guess my question to Melanie or Brent or yourself, it's set at a 4 to 5% increase every 2 years, correct? It's on a scale, but works out to be about a 4 to 5% increase every 2 years.
Yes. I've explained numerous times.
Yes.
That
Yes, thank you.
4 to 5%. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So if that scale was set at 8 to 10%, would we still be okay with that? Because somebody else set that scale?
If that's what industry would dictate, then that would be something different.
So let me
But
just say,
it's not set that way. This is the way professional scales work. Like in any professional organization, scales work this way.
Okay, so just to be clear, Deputy Warden Dignan, an independent outside party was hired because there was a feeling that maybe things were out of whack a bit. It was studied. This was what was come up with. And now we're sitting here pretending like we know better than people who do this for a living, who figured this out based on the study from around the province. So in
No,
other words,
I don't
no,
think that's the case,
hold
Councillor
on.
Brent Sampson.
That I don't see how that's not exactly the case. He's second guessing people who are experts in their field. You can say no all you want, but the fact is we're not experts at this. They hired a group that was experts at it, but they've some councillors here have decided to make it personal, and it's already doing damage. And you know, I don't see where you think this is going to lead to a positive going down the road. Because if you're looking out for your residents and you want them to get the best out of the county staff, this is not the way to do it.
So I guess right quick, and then I'll leave the floor for everybody else. My only point to that is that you can pick personal over and over and over, and you can say that 4 to 5% is the industry standards. Again, back in 2017, when they made the clawback to reduce three employees and clawback, like our CAO said, you know, 15 to 20 salary wages. Are we now trying to get back the salary wages to where they clawed them back, or are we now just at the industry standard?
No, that's not how this works at all. They're based on, this was set up based on industry standard. Like you're not comprehending this is not the staff's fault.
Oh,
It's
I'm
been
not blaming
explained
staff.
multiple times.
Okay, all right. So at this point, I think you know, to the point that several folks have made already, we have discussed this a number of times. You know, the suggestion again that I had kind of suggested was to maybe cut the merit increase in half for this year. So my feeling is that we need to look at a yearly system and develop a policy around this. And I think, you know, one constituent had pointed out to me that just because something has been practiced, you know, the forensic audit had kind of identified that, you know, the word practice existed a lot of times in there, and that wasn't always the best way to make decisions going. I would really like to see council and staff together work on a salary, you know, policy that happens yearly, so we don't continue to run into this. Because I think you're bang on your points, Councillor Brent Sampson and Melanie Sampson. Like, it does nothing for employee morale, and it sort of sets up this you know, wedge between council and staff, and that's absolutely not my intent in discussing this. That being said, I do feel like, you know, yes, it's 48,000 of a large budget of just over 14 million, but at the end of the day, my feeling is that we need to send a message of, you know, of fairness and solidarity to our constituents throughout the county. I'm not suggesting that no one should get it, you know, there should be no increase, but I'm just suggesting that maybe we should work together to each take a little bit of a hit, and then make the commitment together to establish a stronger policy around this, so that we don't keep running into this. And staff can proceed with some certainty into budget deliberations in coming years without having to be concerned about, you know, well, we only do this every 2 years, and that's why it's such a big jump. And it's just a difficult thing to wrap your head around especially when you're just coming in, right? So my suggestion is to establish it at closer to a 2%, 2 to 2.5 at 24,000, and I guess I'd like to hear from councillors if they could work with that. Councillor Brent Sampson?
Well, I would say again, this is second guessing the company that did this, that put the time and the money. The county put out the money for a professional company to do this. So we think.
So Councillor Brent Sampson,
no, hold on now.
What's the difference between a half this year and then again next year and then the next year, as opposed to all at once?
I was
Okay,
speaking,
go ahead,
so I'm going to finish. So they hired a company that's professional to do this. And we feel like after a few months, we can come in and second guess that, and we should change the system to do it every year because you think it's a good idea. When we're not the professionals in this, and we're obviously causing a lot of damage here just through these discussions when it was already voted on, but some people just can't let it go, it seems. So you got to decide, what can you stomach selling to your voters as a tax increase and move on and get there? Because we're an hour and a half into this meeting and we've done almost nothing. And this is why we're in our 9th budget meeting. I got a phone call yesterday from somebody laughing about 8 budget meetings. They had been a previous council. They had never heard of such a thing. But, you know, this is where we're at. So whether we want to accept our incompetence soon or not, we're not getting this done by talking in circles. And we've already voted on this, as Councillor Melanie Sampson said. But, you know, just because we didn't like the outcome, I guess we're going to keep bringing it up over and over again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brent Sampson. Councillor Melanie Sampson. So I would assume, Brent, that you wouldn't be in favor of a half increase and then looking at doing this annually.
No.
Okay,
No.
Councillor Melanie Sampson.
You're muted.
You're muted. Sorry.
No.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sean Sampson.
Yeah, for me, so I mean, if everybody recalls, and no one, a lot of people on this call wouldn't recall it because they weren't on the first couple of calls when it comes to staff anyway. But I was one of the first ones to say, let's do it 2 and 2 instead of 4 and then none. I think the loss was over 2 years. I think the difference was like $1,200, right? In the 2 years, over 24 months, right? So someone would get, you know, based on 60,000, someone would get 61.2 this year, and then 61.2 next year compared to 62.4 and then nothing next year, right? So I think the difference was like $1,200. And again, if you guys recall, that was my first proposal, to try to soften the blow to the taxpayers as much as possible, right? So that's where I'm at for sure.
And just a quick comment to that,
Okay.
Sean. I would be okay with that. I think even if, or I'd consider it a lot more if staff hadn't foregone that raise last year. You know what I mean? And that factors into it a lot for me. If, you know, I probably wouldn't be digging in as hard if this was 1 year ago.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, Deputy Warden.
Yeah, I believe if we go back, I was more than okay with the 2 and 2 that Sean presented last time. Again, I believe we can't be penalized for what somebody did in the past. So we can't take the blow that somebody cut back in 2017, and we can't take the blow that unfortunately staff felt last year. All we can do is work with the numbers we have now, try to do the best we can between all of us. And, you know, I'm more than happy to give staff that 2% or that 2% plus the 1% merit or whatever. We have to show that we're united between staff and between council. And the only way to do that is by all of us taking, unfortunately, a small portion of a hit. And it's not that it's big numbers, but it just shows to everybody out there that we're concerned for them, and we're also trying to help run our municipality effectively as we can. So yes,
Okay.
Well, they took that hit last year.
that's not on us.
I understand, but I'm
Yeah,
just
but it's
saying
still-
they did it last year.
Still happened.
And the
Okay.
people lost their jobs in 2017 still happened, but we can't go give them back their jobs today.
Okay. So I think we have consensus. I don't know if we like it just procedurally, or sorry, I don't mean to say consensus, but majority, but I just procedurally, CAO, would we make a motion to that effect, or is that sort of majority kind of noting that in the minutes? Okay.
No, well, I guess what we could do is provide instructions to the CFO to maybe rework the numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know what the intention is on if 50% of the merit is approved, that's 24,000. So how does that leave us with 1, 2, 3 cents?
Right.
I still think council has to make a decision on whether or not they want to do a 1 cent increase, 2 cent increase, and if they do that, then perhaps we can come to a number, incorporate a 50% merit, and hand it over to Jason, and Jason will rework the numbers, and we'll have to schedule another meeting.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to close this part of the discussion so that we could kind of move on to where, you know, how else we might achieve that. I mean, you know, my feeling is I'd like to be at that 1 cent tax increase for this year. Just like I said, because of those extenuating circumstances, and I, you know, I've been making some notes, and that's why I had all those questions at the beginning to figure, you know, just to kind of get some clarity as to how things would work if we made some changes. So I really appreciated that. And so, you know, I have other suggestions, but I just want to make sure that this part of the discussion is closed so that we can move on. So are we okay as a group of 5 councillors moving on? I don't think we need a motion to that effect at this point, do we?
I guess if I could just speak
Yeah.
for me, Warden, is that, so
Yep.
the way I view this is that we're in a budget workshop, so
Yep.
technically we don't work based on motions, we work based on
Exactly.
consensus or majority. But I just
Yep.
want to be clear that it is the direction from councillors to cut the merit in half by 50%.
I think that's, I like Deputy Warden, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Deputy Warden, Councillor Sean Sampson, is
Yeah,
that?
so for me, I'd like to see it instead of going 4% this year and then next year go 2 and 2. Yeah.
Well, so again, forget about the 4%. We have an amount in the budget today.
That'll work.
Yeah, 48,000, yeah.
It equals
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
48,491.
Right.
And what we're asking is, what amount of that do you want to take off? And again, we're being accused of not having clearness and direction. So I just want to be clear on
No.
what we're taking out of the budget.
Yeah, so I just assumed, and I think that number was thrown around in the past, it was more like 4%. So that's why I said 2, but if it's 48, yeah, 24.
So
Yeah,
I explained that the merit increases are between 4% and 5%, and it varies based
Right.
on the role and the level of the scale. So the amount of the
Yes.
budget is 48,491. So if you're okay cutting that in half, that's the number I'll change.
And I guess the other question too, were there any other items that council wanted to look at? I mean, I
Yes,
heard
absolutely.
you folks
Yeah.
throwing around the council chamber upgrades.
Yeah.
If there were any others that you want to, act upon, this is the time to do it right now. Let Jason know, and we'll use
Yeah.
those changes it'll
Definitely,
all
CAO.
help in what we need to perhaps transfer from reserve if that's the route.
Yeah.
We should also have a mini vote on the tax rate, right? Because I don't know if everyone spoke on what the tax rate should be, so we should do that as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I mean, we can move to that next. I just wanted to kind of close that last piece off. So my feeling is that it should be at, I feel like I'm introducing this, but anyway, my feeling that it should be at the 1 cent mark. But I absolutely like to hear from other councillors what they think on that front. Maybe we'll start with you, Councillor Brent Sampson.
I mean, I was okay with the 3, and I can live with the 1. I can,
Okay.
I think at this point we're kind of nickel and diming over that last thing for what we're going to gain from it. So it depends how much we want to cut. It's we can get out of here a lot easier on a 2 cent increase than we can on a 1, I guess. I'm okay either way. I guess we're just gonna go along.
Yeah, and I mean, we can leave that we can talk about the other items where we might
Well,
be able to find some savings first, if that makes more sense.
No, I think we'll be working backwards. That's why I said this probably an hour ago or so. If we just decide where we want to get to, then at least we, if we have a destination, then we can try and get to that point. So otherwise, we spend an awful lot of time doing a whole lot of not much.
Okay, so you're okay with what's your preference then?
My preference would be 2, I guess, if we're going to adjust it at all.
Okay, 2 cent increase. Councillor Melanie Sampson.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, 2 or 1, whatever.
Okay.
If I was really picking, probably 2.
Okay, Deputy Warden.
Yeah, I guess I'm in the middle. I'd like to present 1 to the people, but if that's not possible, then and we can only reach 2, then opposite of I know it seems like we're going back and forth, but opposite of Councillor Brent, I feel if we work what we have in front of us to see what number we get to, then it makes it easy. If we get to the $100,000 mark and we're 100,000 less, then we're going with 2. If we get to $200,000 mark and we still need 100,000, then we could go with the 1. So
Okay.
I would prefer the 1. However, if it's unsustainable, then I will accept the 2.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sean Sampson.
Yeah, I mean, for me, going back to CEO Marchand, and I'm a numbers guy, so again, going back to what Don said earlier about it being only $30 a year, and that's the way I look at it too sometimes, right? It's $30 a year, there's 52 weeks in a year, it's less than $1 a week, but when you divide 800 into 830, it's 4%, right? So, if you go 800 by 4%, it's $32. That's the increase at 3%, right? So for me, my concern again is that people on old age security, EI, not working full time, 52 weeks a year. These people here are going to see an increase, financial burden of 4%. Their old age is not going up 4%. This stuff, their unemployment rate is not going up 4%. Their wages aren't going up 4%. So for me, the closer we get it to 1, the better I'll feel for sure. Right?
Okay, and yeah, so it sounds like 1 or 2, but if we could get to 1, that people would be happy with that. So, I guess
I think what we need to have here is 1 or 2, not 1, maybe 2. I think we need to have 1 or 2. We need to have an exact number. I think that's probably the only way that Jason's going to be able to work the numbers and present a budget that we're going to have consensus on the next time, because that's what we want.
Yeah. Okay, so Councillor Sean Sampson, I heard you say the closer to 1 would be your preference. Okay, yeah. Deputy Warden, is that?
Yeah,
okay.
Closer to 1.
And Councillor Melanie Sampson, you were around the 2 mark, and then Councillor Brent Sampson, the 2? Yeah, okay. All right. So, I mean, my feeling is, like, again, I could live with both, but I'm really concerned about assessment values right now too. So that's why it's kind of pushing me to think the 1 cent mark would be a better option. I do want to, I'm hoping that we could have a chat about the chamber upgrades. I did want to also, I wanted to also mention that I had an update from discussions with, following Councillor Brent Sampson, your comments at a previous budget discussion about a couple of events going virtual. I spoke with the Superport Corporation today. They're an organization that they don't run events often. They run this one event. So it's not really part of their business model. This is just, it's something that they do to kind of network and build the industry. And so they've indicated that they could forego that $1,250 contribution this year. So I wanted to let everyone know about that. They're not going to be seeking sponsorships from any other municipalities. So that's how it came up today. So.
And we're not getting to a real draft today, right? If Jason has to rework some of the numbers, then I mean, I think 27,000 we have set aside for Canada Day. I cannot imagine we're going to hit that that number. So we probably have a little bit of wiggle room there as well.
Yeah, and I guess if I can, I guess throw a little more emphasis on why I went with the 1. Not that it matters to anybody, but we got to remember that we also increased the water and sewer in locations, right? So it's not just so you're gonna get the tax assessments are going to go up for the people. The we're adding on a 1% tax increase, plus the water and sewer is going to go up for some people. So it's not just a 1% increase that they're going to face for some people that are under restrictions.
I thought we held the water. I thought, am I right about that?
Sorry.
Yeah, the water is not going up right now.
No, and the sewer is just getting distributed. So
yeah.
But distributed. In Petit Gras, distributed means 5% higher.
Yeah, but in some areas it means lower.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think the only area it means lower is Evanston. Petit Gras is 5%, and Arishat, you're looking at 14%. So
yeah,
again, extra. It's added cost.
Of course. Yes, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right, thanks, Deputy Warden. So I did want to mention that because it came up in a conversation. Well, I asked about it in a conversation today in preparation for this evening, and seeing how that had evolved, where they weren't requesting other sponsorships. So my feeling also is that I wanted to talk about the chamber upgrades, and I think we had, like I said, a budget line item in there. I think of something like 35,000. I'm recommending that we really take a phased-in approach to this. If we maybe put 26,000 or sorry, if we put 9,000 into it this year, and I'm picking 9,000 because I'm looking at sort of a formula that I have here, but closer to the 9,000 or 10,000 range, and then do a little bit each year. I don't know what other councillors think about that, but it just seems like in an austerity year like this, it feels like a lot of money to be spending on chamber upgrades, even though it's part of how we plan to, make sure that we can meet that new MGA amendment about, public participation and all that, and making sure we stay engaged. How do councillors feel about that? Councillor Melanie Sampson, do you want to comment on that? Or I can go to someone else. You look like you're working on something.
I'm running numbers, running a fan.
Okay.
Sorry.
I can,
Yeah, like I'm totally fine with us holding off on the chamber upgrades. The biggest issue in the chamber is the sound quality, like the feedback if we're doing virtual items. And I think maybe just getting advice on how to do that properly might solve some of the problems. So I couldn't either. I wouldn't care if we got rid of the whole thing. It doesn't matter.
all right. Councillor Brent Sampson, how are you feeling about the chamber upgrades issue?
I'd be fine with scrapping it all together. And not to say it's not a good idea down the road, but I don't think we're making cuts elsewhere. But it's not an austerity budget, remember, because we've added all kinds of costs to those. We added over 60. Well, we added over 100,000 to those. It went from 192 those other contributions to 300 this year. So it's not pretend it's an austerity budget here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, the difference between investing in community and investing in council chambers, I guess, is how I would look at that at this point. But Deputy Warden?
Yeah, I don't believe we got to bring it down to zero. I'd like to see, again, I don't care. For me, cosmetics is the last thing that I worry about, and the comfort of the chairs. Yeah. However, sound quality and being able to reach our constituents, to me, is number one. And we've had issues in the past, and we have issues with our sound system. So I agree. $9,000 or $10,000 to leave in there, regardless if it's a study that we have to do, or to get somebody in to upgrade our sound system, or to start with an upgrade to our sound system. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Councillor Sean Sampson.
Yeah, just to voice the same opinion as Councillor Melanie and Deputy Warden. For me, I would concentrate on the sound system first, and if that takes us to a third of that budget, then we start there for sure. But I don't think it has to be 35,000. If we don't replace the curtains in the council chambers, I don't think that's a big deal to me. But if we can improve the sound system, then maybe we can.
Okay. So then, all right, so that gives, I guess, a sense of how people are feeling about that item. So the other question I had for councillors is that I keep going back to that $104,500 in those specific studies. And so I just want us to kind of keep that in, maybe in mind as a number that we could be potentially transferring from reserves to our revenue. But I understand, Jason, how, that would be kind of what we would do at the end to fund any kind of deficit situation. But if we, we're basically trying to find $180,000 if we're interested in getting to that 1 cent tax increase. And I mean, I guess I'm go back to those capital lines related to the sewer capital reserve and the landfill closure. And I'm wondering if there'd be an appetite for council to reduce the landfill closure by 25,000 as well. And I know that's, again, goes completely against the grain of what I would normally be wanting to do to save funds, to be prepared for that in the future. But, I guess I'd just like to hear some opinions on that. And councillors want to chime in.
At the end of the day, all it's going to mean is that we're not taking as much money out of our operating reserves. And when the day comes, based on the conversations we had here tonight, that we need to fund the landfill closure, we have the ability to move it from operations at that time. So it's like, move it there now or move it there later. It can be moved. And so, again, I like to see us saving, like, specifically, but it is what it is.
I know. Yeah, I agree. Councillor Brent Sampson, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I mean, I do think is important. I think this is probably the place to make a bit of a cut if we have to right now. If we're just Yeah, okay, so we're decided on one. I'm fine with this as being part of that, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Jason, yeah, you had a comment?
Yeah, so I'd just like to say, yeah, so that's always an area that, like I said in the past, that we've played with, and it's just staff's opinion or feeling or suggestion, but I prefer to see that number lower and look for other areas to cut beyond having a transfer from operating reserve. So I think the first approach would be exactly what you guys are doing right now, to say, where can we pick up some extra money? But rather than have a transfer from operating reserve, I think it would make more sense to try to not have one of those and maybe have that amount plus other amounts be lower as a first step, I guess.
Okay, so if we have a savings of, you say 25,000 on the chamber upgrade, and then the amount from Superport days of 1250, and then the merit 50% of what was originally proposed. Oh, sorry, Councillor Melanie Sampson, were you saying something? You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute again. What about Canada
Yeah.
Day too, right? So whatever we think.
Right.
Like, I know that's only due tomorrow, but.
Yeah.
It's only due tomorrow, so my feeling on Canada Day, and Laurier can chime in too if he wants to, but my feeling on Canada Day is that, yeah, the deadline is only tomorrow, so you're not going to know, what the applications are. I wouldn't necessarily suggest giving people more than they're asking for, but I would consider, due to COVID, that the approach might be better suited to say, are we going to have Canada Day funding or are we not? And we look to either leave it at 27,000 or make it zero. I don't think it makes sense to take that 27 and reduce it down without physically knowing. I mean, I could get 10 more applications tomorrow, and then we're back with no amount in Canada Day, right? So I think the decision is due to COVID. Last year we canceled it. We didn't have it at all. We didn't budget for it at all. So I think the decision is, do we want to have it or do we want to not?
Yeah. Okay. And keeping in mind, we've already advertised for it.
That's right.
Yeah. That's what I'm worried about, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the concern I have, of course. Yeah. Like if we were finalizing our budget, this week, right, then you'd know what the answer to this question is, Jason. And I recognize, you don't have a crystal ball. And, if we knew the government's, reopening plan, we'd be able to have a bit, all of that stuff happening, lots of things happening tomorrow that we're not, we don't know.
I think that if, because I think the CAO can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the intention was if we're having a special meeting, we want to bring those candidate applications forward as fast as we can, because generally we would approve in May Council this year, in past years. So time is getting tight for them to know that they're being awarded the money. Yeah. We likely put that on the same agenda as the budget approval. Yeah. But if you want to leave it in for now, that's fine. And if I can pick up that amount later, I could technically pick it up before that meeting, but we wouldn't know that tonight, I guess.
Also, if I could just chime in for a minute there.
For sure, Laurier.
Yes. So just in regards to the fireworks, where we usually budget $6,000 in each area, so it's $12,000. So in approaching the company, it's Fireworks Effects that gets that got the quote, the tender. So they this year needed a deposit of 50%, just because they don't want. In years past, they had people cancel out on them, so then they lose some revenue there. So this year they needed the 50% in order for them to basically reserve that they will come shoot our show if we have one.
Right.
And so that had to be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So we basically signed that check, but I basically held it purposely just in anticipation of the discussion tonight. So unless you made some type of a commitment, I guess, to them, or, and they've done a bunch of work on our behalf already, then that's one issue. But if they only start the process once they get that 50% money, we could technically void that check. So what's your thought on that?
Are you talking to me on that?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So basically we did have to send a form, a booking, like shooting form, just to say, but they did say with their 50% deposit that if it was canceled this year, that would just get put on credit for next year. And basically they've done our shows for the last, I don't know how long. So it's not like it would be money lost.
Lose it, but I guess my question is can we hold that check and not send it to them at all? Is that fair?
I'll take a look at what was in the booking form to see if there's anything in there that's binding. And then I'll let you know.
But even if we sent them the check, we could just be a prepaid expense. It wouldn't hit our P&L either way, right? So like if we want to get rid of Canada Day, we can, even if we need to send them that check, it would still be in next year's budgets regardless, right?
And I think it's probably in our best interest to send off the check, because I think they're the only pretty much the only gig in town that'll shoot off fireworks. So if we don't have them secure for next year, and we sort of stiff them this year for $6,000, they may not be so kind next year. I did also notice today on the news that Celtic Colors has canceled in person, and they're going to do virtual. I don't know. I don't think we have anything in Celtic Colors, but it's an indication. I mean, that's something that's going to take place in the fall. So yeah, it just might add to our resolve as far as Canada Day. If we decided that we wanted to cancel it, we could potentially, save ourselves $21,000.
I agree, Don, that we should probably send that check. I'd be worried if they're the only game in town.
Yeah.
That would be a problem for future years for sure. So should we kind of like delay the Canada Day discussion until we see what applications come in and what the provincial restrictions might be at the time? I'm feeling like I just don't know how to predict that one.
Well, I'm thinking. Sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
I was just thinking like that probably the people who applied just applied in hopes that they would be able to have an event. I mean, I just can't see how it can how it will happen. I know that, they're expecting that everybody will have a first vaccine, but they've also been very clear that one vaccine is not enough to pull like for big events. So like my heart says we should just pull the pin on the whole thing. But I should say they must pull the pin, but my heart says I hope to God we have a Canada Day to celebrate, right? So I don't know. So CEO, I think you had something to say, which is probably way more profound than whatever I said.
well, of course, the restrictions are in place provincially up until the middle of June. So, I mean, we only have a couple of weeks after that. So, are we going to be in a better position? The cases are increasing in Cape Breton Island. Maybe the province, maybe the mainland will be, they'll lift the restrictions, and maybe they'll hold them off for Cape Breton Island.
That's my concern.
That's my concern as well. I mean, this today alone, I think we had more cases in our zone than central, right? So that is concerning for sure.
We did, yeah.
We
had our highest number.
Is just to leave the 27,000 there, and basically, if we had an amount that was in landfill closure or an amount that was in a transfer from operating reserve, then we would just increase or decrease one of those amounts based on what the decision was once the applications come forward, and it'll kind of happen all together at the same time, I guess. So
okay, so leave it. Would we be okay then with leaving it there, and as Jason has suggested? Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So then if we reduce the chamber upgrade, like I said, by the 25, we have the mayor, we have Superport days reduction. It leaves us with 129. Yeah, 129.5 to get to that 1 cent tax rate increase. We have $111,000 and $111,265 in the landfill closure reserve right now. Which is not enough to cover that. But I guess my question is, are we okay putting that to zero for this year and then taking the remainder from operational reserve?
So it can't be zero.
Oh, it can't be zero. Okay.
Any amount above zero.
Okay. So
yeah,
leaving
like
a nominal amount.
So it would have to be a number, and then we'd have to put something up in the revenue.
Yeah. So I'm wondering at this point if that's the will of council to leave a nominal amount in the landfill closure line and then take the rest from operating reserve into revenue.
Yeah, I think we honestly, we got to get the number down, and we're still shooting at 129,000. So it's not like we can nickel and dime all the little things that we have set aside. So I think right now, yeah, leave a nominal amount in that account, and take away the whatever 111,000 or 110,000, and kind of work from there. At least we got our numbers. We're getting our number down is where we have to be, and so if I guess one of the questions I would have, Jason, if we take that down, let's say to 100,000, and we leave 11,000 in there, and we do cancel, or the candidate celebration does get canceled, can we then take that 27,000 minus the 6,000 or whatever that's set aside? Can we then put that back into the?
Yeah, I think that's how I would propose doing it. So again, if we can get this down, to within 20 to 30,000 here, if it's in agreement to council, if you allow me just to go back and work the budget, we can make up those differences by relooking at a few numbers. So, when you look at 100,000, okay, we want direction. When you look at 15, 20, 25,000, then we can revisit some of the prior numbers. If Canada Day is an impact, then absolutely we can plop it back into that landfill closure, right, and balance it off.
Right.
Just for point of reference, that landfill closure amount since I've been here has been as low as 15,000.
Okay.
So if you put it at 15, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary from a previous prior year.
So that's, that is a big, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Sampson.
No, it's all right. You had started, that's fine.
I was just going to say that is a big jump, and I think this is where we're seeing the difficulty in getting from 2 cents down to the 1 cent, but that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead, Councillor Sampson.
I was thinking, what about this extra 60,500 we had put on those contributions? Like, should we shave that down? I mean, we could cut half of that probably easily enough, 30,000 there. It isn't accounted for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Councillor. When we looked at the numbers that I gave you guys earlier, when it comes to that 60,500 and what it represents when it comes to a percentage of our overall budget. Yeah, it's I don't know if we want to go down that road, to be honest.
Well, if we're willing to cut half of the merits for staff, I think cutting on projects we don't even know exist yet, that was basically somewhere putting aside for, and I agree with putting it aside, don't get me wrong, but it's just, we're talking out of both sides of our mouth here, it seems.
Yeah, but we're talking about 60,500 to invest in all of Richmond County and all the residents of Richmond County. We're talking about 24,000 over 25 employees. We're not comparing apples here, right?
Oh yeah, maybe we aren't, because you're missing the ship left the dock. You're missing the boat on that one. It's going to have far-reaching impacts.
So Councillor Sampson is suggesting.
I think it's only reasonable that we this is something that obviously we wanted, and I like seeing that number increase. But if we're kicking other people in the teeth here, we got to take some ourselves too.
Can I ask a question? I'm just scrolling through the expenses to see what other areas maybe could have something. And I apologize because I don't have that page with my notes in front of me, but under emergency measures, like last year's budget was 30, projection was 17, this year's budget was 40.
There's the dry hydrants are in there.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah, the 10. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure.
I know. I was going through the same exercise for sure.
Yeah. I've done it a few times, but sometimes if you go in reverse order, which is what I'm doing right now, it's different. Yeah, sometimes I start at the top, sometimes I start at the bottom.
Yeah. Deputy Warden Digdon, do you have a comment or a opinion on the community contributions?
Yeah, so I guess mine would be the if we take the 129.5, I guess if we remove the 96,000 and we leave 15,000 in our landfill as an operation, as Jason requested or suggested in the past was done, it leaves us, honestly, it brings us down to $33,235. I guess my question would be, is that a number that Jason can work himself with to make adjustments just within instead of us looking through it? Is that something that that he's comfortable in taking on, or does he want us to get the number lower?
Yeah, like I would say that, the Canada Day is a potential option, as we've all kind of said. So if it won't be tomorrow, but it'll be Monday, that I'll go through the applications for Canada Day, and let's just assume that if groups are looking for $5,000 and the allotment is $15,000, well, I can pick up an automatic extra 10 right there. So we recommend
Right.
to council that we award the 5,000 to 3 groups. Let's just say, if that's what they're asking for, and then I feel like we can get it to a comfortable level. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was the VIC, because I had gotten an email from the village today about whether we were still going to move forward in opening the VIC. So that's $16,000 there. I know it's not a lot, but again, it's a similar question to Canada, I guess, in the sense is, are we going to open the VIC this year?
Do we have a sense yet from are other VICs around the province going to open?
I'm not sure. Laurier, have you spoken to anybody or heard anything? Or
No, I haven't heard anything at all. We just got that email from the St. Peter's group, so that's why I was just, I don't know.
Did we make commitments with, I think it was someone from Tourism Nova Scotia? I just want to.
Yeah, remember we brought it up in one of the past meetings. Yeah. I had that email from the VIC coordinator asking if we were in this year, and then when we asked cancel that meeting, it was an agreement that we would open it. So that's when I went back to them and said, council decided to open it again this year. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard anything from them since that point.
Okay. I thought there was some kind of communicator, some kind of representative from Tourism Nova Scotia that was in the mix of that communication as well, but maybe I got that wrong.
It was just the VIC coordinator, I think, from the province.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is from.
Oh yeah, that's who you mean. Yeah, that is tour. Okay, yeah. Okay.
I believe they had just asked if our intention was to open, and then the answer was yes, that is our intention. I'm just asking, I guess, if that's changed based on tonight, or is it still a wait and see, and let's just leave it in for now?
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to Google here to see if there is any word on VICs in Nova Scotia.
In Port Hastings, I'm seeing them there regularly, like this week working. It looks like getting ready to open, because I've seen staff around there, like just this week, like outside doing little maintenance stuff. But it's, the staff from the VIC, so they look like they're getting ready to open anytime.
Okay.
Probably just waiting the green light. Yeah, the problem I would have with that is I know we did discuss it and we sort of gave the green light on that. So I think it would be a bad idea to kind of go back on that now. Plus, I mean, honestly, I think I'm hoping, maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I think hopefully we're going to have a better summer travel-wise than we did last summer. I mean, remember the bubble last year, I believe, only opened in July. Mm-hmm. So as much as, it's disappointing that we, things spiked up for a third wave and we didn't get it April 19th and so on, but I would hope that there will still be some kind of a possibly late summer and into fall, maybe a busy travel time.
Yeah. Councillor Melanie Sampson, the VIC, do you have an opinion on leaving that in, keeping it?
Yeah, I think I'm inclined to say that we should leave it. I think on different levels, like one, we've made the commitment that we're going to do that. Two, I would agree. I think it's going to be a bit of a better summer. I mean, I don't think we're going to get the full bang for our buck there, but I think making sure we have it for the number of visitors we have. And I do feel like our fall tourism could really pump up a bit. Like once my feeling is, and the conversation that I've read, some of the articles I've read is looking like the country opening in August, sometime later August. And so, if that happens, like not international, but nationally, then we may see some traffic there, because we're open there till like after Thanksgiving, right, Laurier?
Yeah, it's usually until the Celtic Colors comes in, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I would say I think we should leave it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Deputy Warden. Okay.
Yeah.
Did everybody get a chance to chime in on that? I don't, or maybe if you think otherwise, maybe just jump in. Okay. Okay. All right. So I guess at this point then, do we have enough certainty, I guess, for you, Jason, to kind of go back and work that, or to get to the 1 cent tax increase?
Yeah, I think if everybody is in agreement to put the landfill closure reserve at 15, then basically you just instruct staff to rework the budget, and we'll find a way to balance it. And then that way, still, you know, although it's a small tax rate increase, it's progress forward, and then we're not having to take anything out of our operating reserve.
Right, because we still will be waiting on the, I guess the COVID funding or the SAT funding to find out if that's even, or the provincial funding, if it's going to be allocated, right? So that's money that if we do get, we can dump right back into our.
Yeah, any surplus would go into operating reserve at the end of the year.
Okay.
Okay, so if we reduce the landfill closure to leave it at 15, that's a $96,265 reduction, right? Plus another 50 between the chamber and the upgrades and the merit, and then like the 1,250 from Superport. That's still, where does that leave us? I guess that's 146, so we still have 56,000 to.
Just under 35.
35?
Just under 35. So again, given the Canada Day stuff, I think we can make it work. We can go through some of our other revenue numbers, maybe see if we can bump them up a little bit. So again, it's a small amount. If I have to shave my $200,000 travel budget down a couple of thousand, then I'll do that.
So Amanda, on your numbers, I think you're missing the 24,246 on the.
Yeah, no, I just had an error on my calculation.
So Jason, are we around the 33,500? Is that what you have for?
33.
I got 35,851, but yeah, it's around 35,000.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like almost 182,000 that we're short. Like it's not 90 even percent. It's 91,612. Yeah, it's almost 91 a cent. Yeah.
I got the exact numbers here. We're about just under 35,000 off. So Canada Day, we might be able to make up some there, and then we'll just work the rest.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I guess at this point, I just want to check the temperature of everyone. We're kind of going against our original thought process around a couple of items here, but are we okay still with that 1 cent increase or 1 cent tax increase at the cost of what we've just talked about here? Can we live with that? And maybe I'll start with Councillor Sean Sampson this time.
Yeah, so for me, earlier in the evening, I said, when it comes to, budgets and, approving budgets, you have to be able to justify them, right? Either way, did we put it up, put it down, where are we spending, where are we not? So, I mean, when it comes to a 1% tax increase, which represents roughly $90,000 in tax revenue, when you look at the RCMP protective services of 76,000, and our general garment services on line 104 of 17,000, it's $93,000. So we can easily justify that with those two numbers that total 93,000. So no, I'm more than happy, and thanks very much.
Okay, thanks. Deputy Warden.
Yeah, I guess I come in here tonight hoping to make this cushion be a lot more pleasant than it was, obviously, and part of my job was to do the best I can for the people that I represent, and it's not to not work the people that we have to work with on a day-to-day basis. And I really from the bottom of my heart, I'm glad we got to go at 2%, and trust me when I say I had no problem going with the 5 if that was an option. Again, I'm not throwing that back out there. I just want to let everybody know that I'm very happy with the 1, and next year obviously we're going to be revisiting the whole thing again, and we'll have to play numbers all over again. But for this year, for our first year, it's good job.
All right, Councillor Brent Sampson.
Yeah, I would say I hope we don't get into the weeds the way we did next year and overcomplicate this to a point that we end up with 9 meetings. But I think we got a little ridiculous, but anyhow, I think we wanted to get to 1 majority, and that's where it is. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about the number of meetings, it's, we don't have to do this in a series of meetings. We can take a couple of days. Other places do it on different schedules too. So, it might be something to think about for next year if that's the desire of councillors. I think it was like one more meeting than what we had originally scheduled or something, but it's a good point.
No, all I meant was that I don't think we need to take, 20 some hours on it. This isn't the first time this has been done. Staff is pretty used to doing this every year, and I think we might have made a bit of a mess of it.
Well, I mean, there were 7 meetings scheduled originally, Councillor Sampson, and if we had to take a couple of extra, I don't, I'm just saying, like, I had questions, and I really appreciate the time that everyone's taken to answer them and to have these discussions. So, but you're okay with where the budget sits right now, then, Councillor Sampson?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm not, and again, it's not that I'm trying to beat a dead horse. I'm not okay with the merits, and I'm not sure which way I'd vote on it, but there's been a decision here, and so that is what it is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Melanie Sampson?
So I am prepared to follow the will of the majority of council and vote in the affirmative for the budget for sure at our special meeting, and just want to take the opportunity to thank, specifically Don and Jason, but also Laurier and Chris and everybody for their patience, because we do recognize that we are a little slower on the uptake for all these pieces, but we're hoping that we've learned a lot this time and we'll retain it for next year. So yeah, I am prepared to support the budget at our special meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Sean Sampson, did you have a comment or a question?
Oh no, I'm good. Just going back to Brent's comments earlier, and to yours earlier, Warden Marquette. I think as the year goes on, we put some policies in place to make sure that everything's in place when it comes to next year, and some of this stuff and these hard discussions don't have to occur next year, right?
Okay, thank you. All right, so CAO, does that provide clarity enough for staff to return with a budget for a special council meeting?
Well, I think we should make the changes and take it back to council and once again get consensus. I think that's the way it was done in the past, and I think that's the way we should continue. Provide a motion to council based on consensus from from council. So Monday we'll find out, Jason, further details on the candidate applications. Maybe send out an email to council with the results of that, and then move forward from that on a final date. Maybe Tuesday evening budget meeting, special council 2 days later, I think would be appropriate. I think that's what we need, 2 days, or even Monday if we can get that information Monday and have a budget meeting Monday night.
You're suggesting we have another budget workshop meeting before the special council, or?
Well, I would prefer to have consensus from council, because right now what we have is we still have some indecision as to how we're going to come up with that 35,000. So
consensus by email is what I'm wondering. Like I am previously committed to 2 other things on Tuesday night, and it's impossible for me to meet. I could meet Monday, but again, like, could we do consensus over email?
Well, I think the CFO should provide the document.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then arrive at consensus so that we can have that sort of in place before the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the special council meeting.
Yeah.
So if we schedule a special council meeting for Wednesday evening, we could have a budget workshop. Or no, Wednesday's not a good night.
It depends on the time.
Okay, so if we scheduled that special, if the timing worked, we could schedule like a budget workshop for a half hour before, or an hour if we felt we needed, and then have the special council meeting right afterwards. That would allow us to get the consensus that you're talking about, Don, I think.
Well, I just think that there might be some issues there with Jason.
As long as, again, we're in very unfamiliar territory as a staff here, because I'm not sure, and I haven't gone back and checked the records, but I'm not sure in the history of Richmond County has a budget been deferred when it's been presented to council in this way. But I guess the only concern is that if I'm gonna send out the documents and we're gonna gain consensus that we're not gonna look to change stuff before the special council meeting, because then if one thing is getting changed, then there's no point in having the special council, because everything won't be ready. So we just want to make sure
Right.
that, you know.
So if you send the documents in advance, I mean, we have to have a special council meeting anyways to talk about Canada Day. And I think there was, the Brizo Energy letter as well. And there might have been something else. And I really think
application, actually, PCAP. I think Chris.
Yes, that's what it was. Thank you. Yes. So I knew there was a couple of items, and so we have to schedule one anyway for next week.
Yeah.
My feeling is if you can present the budget documents like a day or two in advance.
Well, we need them at least 2, because we need 2 days notice for a special council.
Yes.
Well, she's saying that
Yes.
you're making a special council anyway, so you can.
Yeah.
We could set one up for Thursday.
Set it up for Thursday, and then half hour before. I'm comfortable with it. It's you guys are the ones that have the authority to change the number. So again, we want a smooth sail right through the approval.
Yeah.
Now, do we have, before we, and I don't know if it slipped everybody's mind slip, or maybe I just got it wrong, but I believe we had the cart before the horse in a legal issue that we need to discuss. Do we have to do that in camera prior to accepting the, and I can't go into detail because it's in camera.
Yeah.
So you're on mute.
I didn't think there was anything else to discuss. So.
Not in public. I think is what you're getting at. Okay.
Right.
No, not even in private. I didn't think. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe
So
Deputy
I would
Warden,
suggest that if there's an in-camera issue, that we'll deal with it at the committee to hold meeting.
after. Yeah, I think. Okay,
It's nothing that
after.
will affect this budget.
Am I missing something, or?
I don't know.
Maybe Deputy Warden, could you and I have a conversation about that off, in private, or maybe with the CAO or something, just to clarify.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I want to make sure that we're all okay. I'm good with it. I just want to make sure everybody else is.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah. So Saturday or Thursday evening is the quality of life stakeholder gathering. When would Wednesday work for folks? And Melanie, you said it would depend on the timing. So.
Yeah, like I have an AGM that I have to attend at 6:30.
Okay.
I have to present. So
right.
I don't know that I can be done by 7 o'clock is the problem.
Okay. All right.
The other thing, I've just been informed by Yvonne that we need to give the public 3 days notice on a special council.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Okay.
So if the meeting was at 7:30, I could assure you that I would be there by 7:30. I just can't promise you to be there by 7, and their AGM is already advertised.
For sure. Okay. Could we schedule then for a 7:30 Wednesday evening special council meeting? And in order to get the consensus ahead of time, perhaps we could find some time, I don't know, around maybe I know you mentioned, Melanie, you've got some meetings on Tuesday night as well, but maybe you're before your meetings on Tuesday evening, or?
Yep. Yeah. If it was prior to 6 o'clock, my meetings start at 6.
So we could do a 5 p.m. sort of budget regroup, and then on Tuesday.
We have the municipal affairs meeting Tuesday, do we not?
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking do one right after the other.
Yeah, that might be just while we're there.
Because
anyway,
I think that one's supposed to end at 5:30 so that I would be free for 6 o'clock. So I'm fine with that. I'm fine to go straight through from municipal affairs to last budget to the other meeting. It's all good.
Yeah. Okay. So does that sound okay, Dawn, to do a budget workshop right after municipal affairs, and then schedule for 7:30 Wednesday evening special council, and that'll give us a 3 days notice.
No, we'll advertise tomorrow.
Yeah.
Special council, so we'll have lots of time.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, so I think that brings it to a close, unless anybody has any final comments that they feel they need to make. All right, I'd like to thank everyone then very much for your hard work on this and a hard discussion. I understand, but I really, really appreciate everyone's contribution. So could I have a motion at this point to adjourn, please?
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Okay, thanks, Deputy Warden. Seconder.
Melanie will second that.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie Sampson.
I gotta
All
get
those in
somebody else
favor?
to check.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for sharing,
Those in
Brent.
favor
Appreciate
say
that.
aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Much appreciated.